Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro criticized the Biden administration for what he described as a failure to connect people to high-speed, affordable internet. The governor was referring to the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program, which received $42 billion in funding back during Biden's first year as president.
But the slow implementation of the program was the cause of a great deal of frustration for Shapiro. He says it was just one example of President Biden being unable to follow through on his plans.
I think historically, if I'm being candid, the Biden-Harris administration didn't provide those specific, tangible things that people could see or feel. I'll give you a very specific, concrete example. One of the biggest things holding back our rural communities is a lack of high-speed, affordable internet. Some people call that broadband. I've got 246,000 homes and businesses without it.
And there's more from the governor.
I was incredibly proud of President Biden when they got that infrastructure bill passed to provide the billions of dollars that were needed to plug everybody in, connect everybody in Pennsylvania. And do you know how many people, Scott, this many years later, have been connected to high-speed, affordable internet thanks to President Biden's law in Pennsylvania? Zero. Because the dollars were never driven out.
Shapiro, of course, was on the short list of candidates to become Kamala Harris' running mate once Joe Biden gave up his bid for re-election in 2024. Now, the governor is currently promoting his new book, published on Tuesday, which goes into greater detail on why he felt it wasn't a good idea for him to be Kamala's VP.
There was some controversy between the two when Shapiro wrote that Harris's team had asked him if he was ever an agent of the Israeli government. Shapiro also made an appearance on The View earlier this week and explained why he thought it was important for him to talk about that moment.
I wanted to make sure that I was being forthright with people about what I went through, how I processed these decisions. As I said a moment ago, getting the chance to speak about this for the first time in what is otherwise a process that's pretty closed. And to me, this wasn't about dishing respectfully. It was just more about how we went through the process, what I thought, what I felt coming out of it. And I hope the story there shows that I'm someone who's driven to serve and to serve in a way that still allows me to be a good dad, a good husband, and have an impact on people's lives.
This all comes as speculation grows that Shapiro could run for president himself in 2028. But for now, the governor says he's only focused on this year's midterms elections.
So I wanted to talk about this because I thought that conversation he had with Scott Galloway, who we discussed yesterday, and Jessica Tarlov, was really revealing. So this is a infrastructure thing that Democrats wanted and voted for, to spend a lot of money to get internet access into rural communities. And they spent all this money. This money was approved. This is something Democrats wanted to do. And they didn't do it, even though the money was appropriated, because there's too much red tape, too much hoops to jump through. It's actually difficult. This is the same story with money approved to build charging stations for electric vehicles all over the country. They built 0 charging stations. This is something Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson talk a lot about in their new book, The Abundance Agenda, because we have lost the ability for government to do things. Government,
they discuss things.
Makes even it's not, and usually when you say that, it's like they can't agree on anything, there's too much gridlock. No, that was not the problem. Congress was not the problem here. They voted to do this. The problem was implementation. The problem is, to build anything, you have to get a permit, and you have to do an environmental impact report, and you have to work with the right laborers, or you get union problems, or you have to buy the right goods, or they're going to get tariffed, or you have to do, there's just too many stops and checks in the process. We could never build, the Hoover Dam went up in the equivalent of 50 seconds compared to the pace at which we do things now. The Empire State Building, the highway system, all these amazing accomplishments that were partly due to government planning and funding would be impossible now because there's too much bureaucracy and regulation, and that is something that vexes me and is vexing to Josh Shapiro. It's one of the reasons that people don't trust Democrats to be in charge at the federal level, because states where they actually do manage to build it, look at California, approved money for high-speed rail, what was it, 30 years ago now? However many years ago, they haven't built it. They spent the money, they haven't built it. Whereas red states are building new housing, more apartments, more single-family, all that stuff. They're doing it more effectively because they have less environmental regulation, less labor regulation, etc. People are moving to red states because there's more housing. And Democrats nationally need to have a better answer to that. Democrats are more willing to spend money than Republicans, or spend government money, or approve government funding, approve a project, but they can't do anything with it because there's too many veto points on their process for building things. I think it's a huge problem. I'm glad Josh Shapiro is talking about it. I'm glad he's willing to cast aspersions on the Biden administration for their lack of follow-through. That was something that's very frustrating to people, even including people who are Democrats.
I can't argue with you.
Yeah.
The fact that he said zero, I was like, wow, because I remember how the conversation even blew up past where it is at the moment that they probably received the funds. It was because during the pandemic, a lot of kids, you saw the disparity with lack of access to, you providing this access in certain communities. It's like if you have no service on your phone, can't even use your mom's signal from her phone to get on the laptop you may or may not have. You can't even, you can drive to the library if you don't have a car. There were a lot of disparities that we saw specifically with young kids and access to broadband. So the fact that it never was implemented is tragic. And I understand that Shapiro also has a book coming out that he wants to be a New York Times bestseller. He also has the book coming out on the heels of saying that he's likely going to run for president given every single action that he's doing. So we know that part of that is, listen, I am not, what did Kamala fail at, or people critique her of, is that she went on The View on that same program and wouldn't separate herself from Biden. A noble decision, because it's an awkward position to be in, to be self-righteous in that moment when your partner, that was a partner for years as vice president and president, is not only probably publicly embarrassed from that debate, but also receiving the brunt of should have stepped out or you shouldn't be there. There was a lot of contention in that moment. I think she probably would do it differently. And she said that if she can go back again, maybe just pointed out the differences. So Josh Shapiro is very clearly, and he has been pointing out the differences, even by saying that it was his choice to not be her running mate as opposed to her choice, like why I chose not to. He's making himself look strong in this moment, completely different and like an alternative, because the biggest argument that people are going to have and that President Trump seems to rely on is the failures of the Biden administration. And this is exactly, he's like, I can point out a failure and tell you why I chose not to join his second person when she was going to become the first and I'd be her second, because I didn't like the way that they led and some of the things they were doing. And so I think part of this is like saying that he's like almost like this independent guy, because you even said, I like Josh Shapiro. I mean, not like him, but you're like, he's fine. And that's,
I don't like him.
You don't like him, but fine is like a big statement coming from you. It's not like, oh my gosh, I love, it's like, he's fine. And if, let's say most people that were in the middle that were trying to decide, like all those Nikki Haley supporters, or people that just went for Trump because they like his policies and thought maybe his personality is not the best, those people are still going to vote again. Mm-hmm. And so they have to find somewhere to go. And if there's that same fatigue that there was during when Trump lost the 2020 election, a lot of people were fatigued about the antics. And if we go back into that, Trump's not running again, but they can automatically tie those antics to J.D. Vance or whomever is in his sphere that ends up as the candidate.
Whenever any Democrat talks about government doing something inefficiently and wants to focus on a way to do it more efficiently or get the government out of the way so that the private sector can do it or whatever, that kind of... he first attracted my attention when he came to office and he abolished the requirement that to work for the government in the state, you no longer needed to have a college degree. You could still have a college degree if it was relevant to the position, but it was no longer a on-the-book requirement. Like, that's great. Getting rid of needless credentialism, jumping through hoops, that's what I want. And if more Democrats could embrace that, I think it would be a good thing for the party. I think it would make them more popular and more competitive, and that's all to the good.
Well, I don't know, because we're going to talk about Mamdani in a little bit, but there's two different things going on that are totally different. There's the Mamdani approach, which Democrats will not embrace, and then there's the Josh Shapiro approach. So not that those are the only two. We know there's a lot of different approaches within MAGA or the Republican Party, but that's a big, stark difference between what they're both doing. Up next, rapper Nicki Minaj says she's probably Trump's #1 fan. We'll be right back after this.